white socks because she does flip between those. The tail is super wibbly wobbly and I can do whatever I want. It's great. And I have a full costume sewn with an underskirt and everything. Got this gigantic wig, gigantic horns, bangs, and gloves that I can also manipulate my phone with. Little details. Got her tie and her bow. And I'm all ready to take it off. First, we want to make the skirt. Now to do that, I am going to be showing you how on a miniature piece of fabric before jumping into the actual piece of fabric. For most skirts attached to an upper top, it will be a circle skirt. As you see, I have a square piece of fabric here. Now the reason why it's called a circle skirt is because the main part about it, or the main function that you use to determine the pattern, is a circle. You fold it down and you fold it across. No, this is not a circle. The circle comes into play at this corner. To get that measurement, you measure your waist, so not your hips, but your waist, which is the skinniest portion of your torso, using a measuring tape. Not using, but using. Now, after measuring your waist, you're going to have the circumference of your circle. So if you think of your waist as a circle, the outer rim of it, that's what you're measuring, and that's your circumference. Now, how do you get the radius? Divide that by 2 pi, and that will give you the length that you want from the tip here to the edge, or what's actually going to be where you put your body. So let's say it was 1 inch. So what you're gonna do that would be helpful is have some chalk, but if not, you can use pins to mark it. But you're gonna go from the corner here, and you're gonna do 1 inch, okay? Now from the corner here, and mark 1 inch. Then from the corner here, 1 inch, etc. And that will create the curve of your circle. And you just chop that out. So when you're done, this is cut out, and this is how long you want your skirt to be. So this is from waist to floor, or wherever it is that you actually want it. And then you're gonna have a skirt that you only need to sew on one edge. Now, we're gonna be talking about what I have here. A lot more fabric. What's going on here? I'm not doing a full circle skirt. I am doing only one edge. Now the reason for that is I don't want a whole bunch of fabric. This is already a lot, and it's a long skirt, so I'm doing it a little bit differently. But I need to correct something I did. I may have acted like it was a circle skirt and only cut the radius. Oh no, how do I fix that? I double it. So I just need the diameter of the circle rather than the radius. So I need a full edge. So for you, measure your waist. Just get one of these measuring tools. Now make sure you can stick 3 fingers into the space between your waist and the measuring tool. You don't want it really taut. Why? Because you want room to breathe. Then use a calculator and divide that by the diameter. You only have it folded like that. You have it only folded once. What you're gonna do is you're gonna measure out from the corner into where the waist is going to be with that amount and mark it all the way around. So let's say that my waist is 37, and I divide that by the radius, which is 2 pi, which is 3.14 times 2, so that's just 6.28. Bam, so I have this number, 5.9. So that's inches. We'll go 5.9 inches. But I want the diameter, so that would be times 2 equals 11.8. What you want to be aware of is making sure that this portion and this portion are the length that you want it to be. Make sure you have a little bit of extra fabric so you can hem. And then also room to make it so you can attach it to the top. Also, what you want to make sure you mark out is, so this portion, and then also this portion, because you need to make sure you cut out the curve of the skirt down here as well. Then, once you're done, we're going to move on to the next part of sewing. One of the easiest parts if you have a sewing machine, if not, a little bit tedious because it's going to be a pretty long while. But you got this. You got it! I believe! What I want to do is hem the bottom all along, just at a 5/8, all along the edge. Make sure that if you are going to be sewing this edge, and this is the rough edge then, that on the bottom of the skirt, you fold it so that the rough edge matches, right? So this is the gross side, so we're gonna flip it right side out, and this will be the nice side and have the hem. Using the lazy method of just feeding in the hem as I go, using the foot as a guide, making sure not to pull because it is stretchy fabric. Just being careful as I go. And reversing so that it ties a knot. Before sewing on the zipper, make sure to read the instructions. Also, it's important here because it has an open back, because it just has the X on the back rather than being a full back of fabric, you will want to hem this first. So hem this, then apply the zipper into the back using the instructions. I'm using an invisible zipper, which basically means that you won't be able to see it. I'm going to have this line be along the back of the skirt, so it should be a lot easier to put on. Unfortunately, I don't have an invisible zipper foot, so instead I have to go with a normal zipper and just keep sewing as I, ow, stab my finger as I go. So it just pushes against the edge, and I've rotated the needle to be over a little bit, so that's why it's on a 2.5. And then I've pinned it all along the edge, and you see that the right side is on the right side. Rights together. And see the hem inside. The zipper is all sewn on. And what does that mean? We can zip it up and then sew the rest of it together. I need to make an underskirt, so I laid out some fabric just on top of the skirt, and I'm going to cut it out in the same shape, and then I'm going to sew it together twice, so then I'll have an underskirt. I didn't necessarily need to pin it like this, but I have put the outer skirt onto the black skirt so that I know how far up I should sew this together, which can be measured without it, right? So I know I only want to go up to here so that I'm able to unzip it still. But I'll sew it together so it will be a finished skirt, and then also I'm going to lock it in place by sewing it around the waist. And now I am sewing it to the waistband. So you can see the zipper, I have it undone, so it makes it easier to go through, and just have it all pinned so I know exactly where I want the foot to go through. And so sewing one-handed and through a phone is awkward. To make trim, I'm going on the longest stitch possible, and then I have a huge strip right here that I'm going to sew it through. And what happens there is because the stitch is so long, I'll be able to pull the thread and it'll bunch it together. So I'll be able to make a ruffle trim. Wowza! From toilet paper to trim. And if you want to make it more wavy, you just pull on the thread. Whew! I just went around and pinned it all around the edge of the skirt. Now, one good thing to do is before you begin pinning, mark the center of both what you're pinning on and what you're pinning to. So that way you can start at the middle and the ends, and then go into the middle of the middles of those middles, etc. And then it allows you to more accurately pin on what you need. final part to just the skirt before I combine it with the shirts is actually sewing up the outer edge. I have the zipper sewn up and then back to where it can go all the way. And so I'm going to sew from where the thread left off here as much as I can, and all the way to the bottom. Let me get tried on. Yes. Now I'm going to cut out the shirt. I'm going to be using a top that's the general shape that I want. Fold it and fold your fabric. Line it up. I know I can cut off a bit at the bottom because I'm actually only going to be wearing this up to my waist, so I'm overcompensating a little bit here. And then as I cut, I will leave a little bit available to sew, and that means I'm just gonna go probably half an inch so that when I sew it won't be smaller than I expect. Ta-da! Take the front piece and pin all the edges and carefully sew them down. And it'll make it easier to tell where you're going to cut down on the front. Throw a piece of fabric onto the back and measure out how big it's going to be. So then you can connect it. Just 2 straps in an X. And in a mirror, I hung it up onto the front of my body and thought, okay, where is the actual neckline? So I just thought, alright, it's going to be right before the armpit goes. So then I originally had it shaped so boop, the armpit was right here, and I had sewn the arm shut, so it was just slightly above. But then, of course, because there was no backing, I needed to change it, so I chopped off a little bit of excess, so that's why there's this sort of jump right here. And then I sewed up the edges, so I'm looking around like that, and everything's good on the edge. Now, when you have this up on your body, it might hang a little weird. To counter that, what you need to do is add a little bit of darting. So this, I'm not sure if the lighting's picking it up, does have some darting in it in terms of making it so that there are going to be lines here, because if it just hangs on my body, it's awkward and too big. So it automatically starts to go, all right, it needs to fold. So I hung it up on my body like this and found 2 points where it did that. And I've lightly outlined where it's doing that on this edge. And then I'm going to use measuring tools, just rulers, to replicate that on this side. And then I will be able to pin it in place on both and sew it and then chop off the extra fabric. And now I'm just taking a look here, making sure everything's the same. So this is how far it's going to do the lines, because then it's a triangle, and then I sew along the edge of the triangle, so like that. So I match these up to this point, and then I make sure it's a straight line, and then I can chop off that extra fabric on both sides. Woohoo! Yay! I've now pinned it on. By it, I mean the front of the shirt, and you can see that it does have a little bit of a curve here. That's because when I was sizing it up, I realized that it still made sense for it to go down a little bit, especially with how this is going to be pulled up. So now it's time to connect it. Ooh, ah. I have 2 strips of black fabric, and what I'm going to do to make it so that I do not need to deal with the seam is sew them just like a tube and then flip it inside out. I've sewn the tubing, and now I'm pinning it to the actual sleeves. Okay, got it all pinned up just so I can see how it will look on me. So I can see that this will flip out a little bit, but I'm okay with that. That's the reason why we put these darts in there. So we have the front just like that, little bump right there. Let me flip it around, and we have the back. My template here, and I'm also referencing the shirt that's in this simplicity pattern. The main thing to keep in mind is you want the poofy sleeves, so you want a big sleeve like that, and make sure to follow the steps that it outlines there. Everything's all cut out, and now I just need to start sewing. I have the back and the sides all lined up and ready to go. I have marks. Well, you could mark it with chalk or pencil, or you can cut out pieces to know how you're supposed to line things up with the other pieces. I've sewn the front up portion of the way, and then I want to make sure that I have the front open so I can actually pull it over my head. So at the top, what I'm doing is just a really small stitch on this portion, and then also for the back I have sewn it on already, just on the shoulders here, and it luckily doesn't have a seam in the back, so I just have to deal with this one. I've applied the inner facing to the back of this, so now I can start trying to put on the actual portion for the top of the neck, which would normally be a neck ruffle sort of thing with the top I'm making, but I want it to actually be nice and refined and cut, so that's why this is on here, to add a little bit more sturdiness to it, because I gotta have I have the beginning of the collar pinned up and ready to go. Lots of pins on this one because I could have used a stitch to get everything pinched together, but I wanted to achieve a very specific look, so we're going to see how it turns out. Part 1 to the collar done. The same thing with the collar, where I have some interfacing fused to it, and this will be going on the portion attached to the neck, so that it will flip over. And I just need to sew all the edges and then sew it on. Sewed it on, and then what happens is I'm going to be able to flip it out and iron it in place, but first I'm going to chop off some of the excess. And now I've put on some sew-on snaps so that it will have a closure system, and then this strip will be covered by the upcoming tie. When making ruffle trim, a trick to getting everything the same size for a fabric like this, where it's sort of on the cheaper side and full of synthetic fibers, is to rip it instead of cut it all the way around. So you can see I ripped this, and I don't mind that I did because I'm going to be sewing it and scrunching it up anyway. I have it started with being cut, and I'm just going to hold it down. Normally I do it with both hands, but I'm going to use my foot as an anchor and just pull it up. Ta-da! Now it is all the same length around. And then I know when it stops being the same length because it stops ripping. So I know right here is where I need to chop off, because this was from a scrap piece. I have the ruffles set by sewing through them, and I'm just going to pull to make them into ruffles. And then I have the sleeves, and they also have a slip stitch so that I can pull and band them together a little bit, and then I'll set them in place. I have the ruffles all made, and the sleeves were pinned, and now I'm just gonna sew them on. Oh baby. I have the sleeves pinned in, and now I have over pinned a little bit. I'm gonna sew it up and then do the same to this sleeve. One sleeve down, one to go. One more ruffle stretch to do. I've already done this one, and then I can apply it to the actual straps in the back around onto the front. I'm doing it that way rather than on the shirt because I want to make it so that it's immobile and it stays where it is with the straps, because it never shows any movement. To make it so that it's easier to know where everything is, I'm going to sew this in place. Also sew the edges of this, so loop it twice so it covers up the rough edge. And pin it all the way around. Whoop whoop. But yeah, just want to make sure that this is actually in place. Fitting test. So I have all the ruffles, and what I can do is adjust how far I want them down or not, just by tucking them in. because with Tohru it isn't clear how far they go down because with the curve of her chest it looks like they just stop like right here, but because of the impossibility of her actual outfit, because it needs to have a stopping point and then go into the back, it's sort of weird and imprecise. I'm going to be working on the bow, tie, and tie around the waist. So I just have my red fabric here. It's good to iron it beforehand. I'm not doing that. And so cutting out something for the waist, and then for the tie, it'll be pretty much the same thing. But then as well for the bow, really what you want to do is just make a rectangle. And what happens is you're just going to bunch it, and then it automatically creates that. So then you just tie it here. So you aren't actually going to be tying a bow with a full strip. You're going to artificially be creating one. Especially because she doesn't have the ties that go down. It's just the bow portion. So, just the bow. The pro tip, after you sew one edge and this edge and leave this open and you need to flip it around, is you put a safety pin on this, so then as you try and shove it through, it makes it a lot easier and you have something to grip on. Okay, with that strip of fabric, I just ironed it out and then I tested it to make sure that it ties, and voila, it is perfect, so I'm very happy. And then I'll take it off and sew this edge. The interfacing is going on, and then I'm gonna flip it inside out with the little portion that I didn't sew because everything else is sewed on the edge. Yeah. To make the gloves, I have my glove here and then my cutout that I did just to mock my arm, and now I'm sizing it up. I have elastic on it too to make it so that it stretches across my arm and will stay in place. I'm all ready to take it off because I'm done. This is the best part of cosplay. Ah, yes. Oh no. How do I get this off? Let's see. See, it still hugs my head because I have the little cookies in it. Goodbye.